knocks on the door from police. Meanwhile, for actual rioters...
Name for you. Love you. Yeah, if you want to come in.
Also today, the Peace and Rainbows Brigade failed to live up to their name.
Don't touch me! Don't touch me! I will...
Dear oh dear, our man Charlie Peace is getting accosted on the ground in London today. And look who's popped up to have a crack at the PM.
Hi folks, my message to the Prime Minister this week is man up, Starmer. Have some guts, face down your critics, think of your family and take a holiday now.
On my panel tonight, it's journalist and political commentator Benedict Spence, anarchist and academic Lisa Mackenzie, and model and broadcaster Diana Moran. Strap yourselves in, Britain. Let's do this. And some breaking news in the last few moments. The Metropolitan Police have released a statement on the incident involving our reporter Charlie Peters in London earlier today. They said it's important that the press are able to report freely, including at protests, without being subject to harassment, abuse or intimidation. The footage released appears to show a protester trying to obstruct a GBNews camera crew as they reported on the protest by putting his hand up to the lens. As he does so, a man who was working as security for the camera crew intervenes and pushes him away. Officers moved quickly to prevent and further escalation. No allegations were made at the time and both parties went their separate ways. We have confirmed with GB News that they do not wish to take the matter further. The rest of your news headlines now with Sam Francis.
Ben, thank you very much and good evening to you. 2 minutes past 9. Plenty more on that breaking news from Ben later this hour. First, though, the top story tonight. The parents of BB King, one of the 3 young girls who were killed in the Southport stabbings, have described her as full of joy, of light and of love. They've also revealed that her older sister saw the attack at last Monday's dance class but did manage to escape. Well, that comes as anti-racism demonstrators have taken to the streets of London today, countering almost 2 weeks now of anti-immigration protests and riots across the country. That's after misinformation about the Southport suspect sparked a wave of often violent riots. And in the capital today, thousands of campaigners were seen carrying signs supporting refugees and opposing racism and Islamophobia. Authorities say they do hope the violence is subsiding, but thousands of specialist officers are still on the streets this weekend. And that's as more than 740 people have now been arrested over those riots, including tonight a 16-year-old boy who's admitted to stealing £19,000 worth of vapes during unrest in Liverpool. A court heard today how he was seen on CCTV with a group who pulled a police officer off of his bike before attacking him. The teenager later used an e-scooter to ram a shop window and help himself to those e-cigarettes. He'll be sentenced next month. Meanwhile, in Belfast, police are treating an attack on a mosque today as racially motivated. A petrol bomb was thrown at a building in County Down earlier, but didn't go off. Graffiti was also painted on the front door and the walls of that building. Misinformation, as I say, about the Southport stabbings have sparked that wave of often violent protests across Belfast, where our reporter Doogie Beattie has been today, as thousands of people took to the streets.
For the second week in a row, Belfast city centre is now closed down because of protests. This one, though, is pro-immigration, fronted up by the trade unions of Northern Ireland, Gay Pride and Amnesty International. But more importantly, the political classes have joined in, and many in those working class areas that are facing the majority, the biggest amount of undocumented immigration, now feel that their political voice has gone. This parade will due to end in the next hour, but it remains to see what will happen in the coming days.
Doogie Beattie there reporting for us in Northern Ireland earlier. Well, in other news, a 32-year-old man has been charged over a shooting in East London in May, which you may remember left a 9-year-old girl seriously injured. She's still in hospital in a stable condition after that attack at a restaurant in the east of the capital. Javon Riley from Farnborough appeared in court this morning, accused of 4 counts of attempted murder. He's been remanded in custody and will appear at the Old Bailey next month. Up to 500 people have been attending the funeral service of Jay Slater in Lancashire today. Family and friends were packing the chapel at Accrington Crematorium, with others watching from outside, and most wore blue in memory of the 19-year-old who fell to his death in a mountainous region of Tenerife in June. In Cornwall, concert-goers have been left with broken bones after what's been described as a terrifying crowd surge at Boardmasters Music Festival, with reports suggesting some speakers fell into the crowd. A number of people, including children, were caught in that crush, with some taken to hospital. We understand 7 people now have been discharged. However, Devon and Cornwall police have confirmed there were no serious injuries, and it's understood the festival is continuing. A 6th Banksy artwork has appeared in London, the latest in his series of animal-themed images around the capital. The new painting, a silhouette of a cat stretching, is in Cricklewood if you want to go and see it, but you'd have to be quick because it won't be there for much longer. Contractors have been hired to remove it in case someone, they say, rips it down or leaves it unsafe. A fresh image has sprung up overnight every day this week, including outlines of a wolf, a goat, elephants, that's just the panel, monkeys and pelicans. It had to be done. And in sport, there's been a flurry of medals tonight for Team GB at the Paris Olympics. In just the last hour, Kate Shortman and Izzy Thorpe have won a first ever artistic swimming medal for Great Britain in Games history, taking home the silver. And there have also been 3 bronze medals in athletics. First, the women's 1,500 metres, followed by the men's and the women's 4x400 metre relays. And Caden Cunningham is guaranteed at least silver going into his taekwondo final. And, of course, earlier diver Noah Williams won bronze in the men's 10-metre platform. Congratulations to all of them. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. Your next update at 10 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Sam. Now, there's an all-out attack on our freedoms currently being waged by Keir Starmer and this new Labour government, and the riots we've seen over recent weeks are the vehicle for their agenda. Brits are now being rounded up and arrested for things they've posted on social media in a chilling precedent that George Orwell would be proud of. Bernie Spofforth, the 55-year-old woman accused of being the first to post the fake name of the Southport attacker online, well, she received a knock at the door by cops this week and is still being detained tonight. She denies claims that she incited the riots, saying she simply shared previously posted material. And if you attended the riots but simply watched on from the sidelines, well, you're not safe either. A judge this week said anyone who attended the violence, whether they were involved or not, would be refused bail in the courts. So what's clear now is the useful idiots who rioted across Britain, well, they've played right into the hands of this government's chilling agenda, which, by my estimation, is to silence concerns of mass uncontrolled migration by stamping out free speech. Starmer is now targeting people for their online chatterings and sending the police to arrest them. Just listen to the Director of Public Prosecutions, Stephen Parkinson.
And we do have dedicated police officers who are scouring social media. Their job is to look for this material and then follow up with identification arrests and so forth.
Normal, hard-working Brits are being gaslit into believing they're an outlier, a racist, if they're not on board with unidentified fighting-age males rocking up at our southern border week after week. And we're also being made to feel like worries and concerns about the levels of legal migration to Britain and the societal and cultural changes that brings means you're a far-right thug. This whole charade reminds me of COVID so much that the government is now even relaunching a secretive pandemic-era spy agency to monitor social media for those who comment on the riots. And as we saw with the lockstep front pages of our printed press earlier this week, you're being nudged into believing that your fears for the safety of this country are just unfounded hysteria. So thank God for Elon Musk and X, formerly Twitter, the social media platform he spent £40 billion on to save free speech. He might be the richest man in the world, but let's be clear, first of all, Elon Musk is no messiah. He himself was guilty of reposting a fake Telegraph article this week that Sir Keir Starmer was considering detainment camps for rioters. But for all his faults, we wouldn't have even known there were other ethnic groups involved in riots across Britain if it wasn't for Musk and X. Musk has goaded Starmer online, calling him a hypocrite, over his alleged two-tier approach to the riots, while also suggesting the PM is overseeing a Soviet-style administration. In response, the highest police officer in the land seemed to bizarrely hint that Mr Musk could be extradited to Britain to explain himself.
From further afield online, we will come after you.
Talk to me about that, because we have seen some high-profile figures whipping up the hatred. You talked about it in there with the officers, in fact, about this being added to by online commentary. I mean, I'm even thinking of the likes of Elon Musk getting involved. What are you considering when it comes to dealing with people who are whipping up this kind of behaviour from behind a keyboard, maybe in a different country?
They want Elon Musk gone, X turned off, and freedom of speech stamped out. Starmer himself has said he's going to look at social media laws in the wake of the riots and even revisit the Online Safety Act. And right on cue, of course, the Westminster elite are now circling. Guardian columnists got their knickers in a twist, saying Musk should be on trial in the UK for inciting the riots. And Keir Starmer's champagne socialist biographer, Tom Baldwin, called for regulation of social media platforms, even saying free speech was not absolute.
There's a sort of silly argument sometimes about free speech, and Musk is sort of trying to pretend sort of freedom of speech is some absolute right. It's never been an absolute right, and we have regulation. The BBC is regulated. I think the BBC is better for being regulated.
Yeah, OK, so Baldwin's suggestion that the BBC is the holy grail of journalism, that's also laughable. Who remembers the Beeb incorrectly saying Israel bombed a Gaza hospital last year, killing 500 people?
The Israeli military has been contacted for comment, and they have said that they are investigating. But, it is hard to see what else this could be, really, given the size of the explosion, other than an Israeli airstrike or several airstrikes. Because, when we've seen rockets being fired out of Gaza, we never see explosions of that scale.
The truth about that lie was only unearthed thanks to X. It wasn't Israel who bombed the hospital. It was a misfired Palestinian missile. The BBC's international editor, Jeremy Bowen, explained himself.
I think I was measured throughout. I didn't race to judgment.
But you said that building had been flattened.
Oh, yeah, well, I got that wrong because I was looking at the pictures, and what I could see was a square that appeared to be flaming on all sides.
OK, so he got it wrong. Fine. So does that mean now we're going to bang up the likes of Jeremy Bowen or BBC executives for getting it wrong and inciting further bloodshed in the Middle East? And is the chief executive of far-left campaign group Hope Not Hate, Nick Lowles, going to get a knock at the door by Starmer's stormtroopers for incorrectly saying a Muslim had acid thrown over them during the riots? Because that, too, would have flamed intentions. Make no mistake, the minority racist idiots who caused the worst of these riots have opened the floodgates for a power grab of our civil liberties under this Labour government. And it's a crying shame that it's a US-based South African who's the only one with the balls to stick up for British citizens, and not our so-called free press. But let's get the thoughts now of tonight's panel. Journalist and political commentator Benedict Spence, anarchist and academic Dr Lisa Mackenzie, and the journalist and model Diana Moran. Good evening to you all.
Good evening.
Those graphics not bad, are they?
Welcome.
First time, the debut, Ben Leo tonight. Lisa, let's start with you, if you don't mind.
No.
Is this a power grab by Labour and Starmer at on our civil liberties? Is this Starmer's surveillance state wet dream?
Yes. I can't say anything else, really. I mean, yeah, I am an anarchist. I think that power should be decentralised, and what he is doing now is absolutely centralising it within sort of 1 mile of Westminster. I would say that Starmer's point here is more sort of Stasi than Starmer. He's encouraging people to tell on their neighbours. He's threatening people with prison, even if they're there or not there or whatever they might have said. And none of it is clear, because I don't know what is arrestable and what isn't. Now that seems to be very wrong.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
Do you know why that is? Because they want to create such an atmosphere of hesitation and fear that you just won't bother saying anything. Yeah. You just keep your mouth shut, as they do in China. No one criticises the government. No one wants to get their social credit score so low that they can't travel. It's all part of the plan. Diana, is Starmer a commie? Is he a communist in disguise?
Is he a what?
A commie, a communist.
Oh, possibly. Possibly. He's certainly not my most favourite man, and I'm very fearful with everything that's going on just at the moment. I'm nervous to say what I really feel about anything, because who's listening and what could happen. It's a very frightening state of affairs just at the moment.
Benedict, what do you make of Elon Musk? Because at the moment he seems to be the only person sticking up for free speech, not just in Britain, but all over the world, and he really is taking Keir Starmer head on, isn't he?
I'm very cynical about this with Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk is really good at saying exactly the right thing to really wind up a certain kind of centrist British commentator who then can't help but comment themselves on X, which drives more engagement on X, which leads more people to criticise those people on X and creates more content for his social media platform. Ultimately, I think that this is what it's about. It's about traffic engagement. And, of course, he then gets to say on the side, and I'm also a champion of free speech, but he knows full well, actually, his influence is negligible in the UK in terms of lobbying and on politics, and it's unlikely to, for example, be mirrored in Conservative Party politics at the moment. And even if it were, it wouldn't be very useful. The Conservative Party is in a bit of a hole at the moment. But it does sort of feed into that sort of sense of animosity, that sense of fear that's going around. And that's good for him because it's good for his social media platform. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, because I would say right now, one of the things you're talking about, us potentially descending into a police state as a sort of a surveillance state, actually social media changes and moves at such a pace that modern Western states can't, in fact, keep up with it. It's a very different atmosphere to, for example, East Germany was in the 70s, for instance. Actually, I don't think the British government has the capacity to keep pace with social media platforms like X or things like Telegram.
No, I agree actually with that. I also think, I don't know why has Starmer and the government reacted to Elon Musk. So he said Elon Musk is posting all sorts of mad things actually on X. I've seen them; they're quite mad.
Funny.
And they are funny, yeah.
Which bits are mad?
I mean,
can you cite any?
Well, when he
the year is 2030, and you're about to be executed for posting a meme in the UK.
He's posting some amazing memes.
But,
I mean, you should have showed them tonight.
But the fact is Keir Starmer is reacting to that. That's not why is our Prime Minister sort of getting our country into a spat with sort of social media mogue? It seems mad to me.
Diana, do you think Sir Keir Starmer... I've been watching his press conferences. He looks sort of wide-eyed, a bit tired, a bit haggard. Maybe he does need that holiday. He said tonight...
I think he probably does.
Do you think he's a bit rattled with not just Elon Musk? I mean, he's piling the pressure on, but with the whole riot situation, he is feeling the...
I think he must be feeling very rattled. As you say, he was going to go on holiday and this has come instead. And by golly, hasn't it come with force? It is really, really frightening. And as an older person who doesn't do Twitter...
Yes, you're not on social media, are you?
No, I don't.
So how have you analysed what's been going on with that?
Listening to GBNews, mostly.
Oh, good on you.
No, and I'm serious when I say that.
Yeah.
But I do find it frightening that the world, or we in this country, are reacting to Twitter and X like that.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, the one woman who put that particular comment on, the woman from Cheshire in her farmhouse...
We're slightly careful what we say.
All right, but just think what one thing has kicked off. I find that really frightening.
Yeah, OK. Scary, very scary. And if we've got 5 more years of this, I dread to think, well, A, where we're going to be, and B, what Sir Keir Starmer's going to be looking like in 5 years.
I don't think he's got 5 years.
Do you think he'll go?
I don't think he's got 5 years. Most of the British public hate him now.
Do you think?
Yes.
I don't know. He's still got that Labour base. I mean,
but it's actually not a majority. It's not a majority base.
I think what you're going to see is 2 things. The next thing is going to be the next round of tensions in the Middle East. We'll see a resumption of anti-Israel protests, and seeing how he deals with that, having dealt with far-right protesters so heavily, will be a key test of his. And then I think also we'll see just how much of an authoritarian he is with his own party when the rebellions start. Then we'll find out how much time he's got.
OK. Right, up next, there wasn't much kumbaya when GBNews went down to the pro-migration protest today.
Don't touch me! Don't touch me! I will...
Peace and harmony, man. Don't think so. I'll tell you what happened when Charlie Peters got accosted in central London, and bring you a moving tribute from the family of one of the little girls killed in Southport. This is Ben Leo tonight, only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Prince Harry also revealed that he wouldn't bring his wife Meghan Markle back to the UK over safety concerns.
Let's talk to royal correspondent Michael Cole.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning, Ellie. I mean, they live in California. I'm not sure what the murder rate is there, but that's a more dangerous place than Britain's at any time of the day. And of course, he compromised his own safety when he said in his book, Spare, his autobiography, which was Ghost Britain, that he'd personally killed 25 Taliban when he was serving with the British Army in Afghanistan. Well, that painted a target for life on the back of himself and his family, which was a very unwise thing for him to do. The other thing which struck me, it was that he invoked the name of the late Queen, saying that he'd had several conversations with his grandmother, and she'd been very, very supportive in his battle. He sees himself, and it's the word he's used, as a dragon slayer against the popular press, the tabloid press, and he's continuing with that. Of course, his brother, Prince William, has settled, but also in the programme was Hugh Grant. Now, Hugh Grant also has settled, as indeed did I, when I received an apology from News Group. I believe in a free and unfettered press. Newspapers are having a bad time at the moment, losing circulation, losing advertising. Young people don't read newspapers. And so I felt that the right thing to do was to settle. I didn't want to take punitive action against newspapers.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said stump.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Ben Leo tonight, only on GB News. Now, the parents of BB King, one of the 3 young girls killed in the Southport stabbings, have described her as full of joy, light and love. They've also revealed her older sister, terribly, saw the attack at last Monday's dance class, but luckily managed to escape. This all comes as the nation recovers from a week of riots that's seen more than 150 people charged in relation to the disorder, as well as the comments made on social media, as we just touched on. So joining me now is the former chair of the Haringey Independent Stop and Search Minority Group, Ken Hines. Evening, Ken. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for inviting me on your platform.
No problem. Looks like you're in a bit of a bunker there, Ken. Are you in your car?
Yes, I am, because I'm at work. I'm doing security. I'm on the door, so I'm just taking a break.
All right, good stuff. Well, look, can we talk about knife crime across Britain? Interestingly, Sadiq Khan said yesterday he felt unsafe in London in the wake of the riots. And I made a point in yesterday's show saying that, well, Sadiq, I'm sorry you feel unsafe and I hope your kids feel better soon. But you've been a mayor in London, at least, presiding over hundreds, if not thousands, of stabbings and even shootings. You're a knife crime campaigner. Is it getting worse across England?
Well, I would have to say yes, it is getting worse. I would also have to say that the people that are involved seem to be getting also a lot younger, who are actually carrying out the most horrendous sort of attacks using these weapons, whether they're swords, whether they're Rambo knives, whether they're machetes. But they've got a mindset that where before, back in my day, you used to frighten people with it, but now they're using it to really go savage and murder people with it.
What do you make of stop and search? Because, of course, there's massive opposition to that from a lot of people on the left side of the argument. And there's reports even that ethnic minorities have been unfairly targeted by police. But isn't it just a fact that knife crime is committed in London, predominantly at least, by the black community?
I think it's this misinformation around that, because when we talk about disproportionality, yes, we are more affected by knife crime disproportionately. But if you look at the overall who's been hurt or murdered by knives, you'll find that it's generally white people that's been murdered in greater numbers, because it's down to reason. We only represent 3% of the UK. Okay, so it beggars belief that we could be committing more crime than 80% of the genetic population.
In London, at least, I mean, white Brits are a minority in London. There are some London boroughs which are predominantly ethnic minorities. So I'm talking about London specifically.
Well, and even in London, I still will hever to say that we are committing more murders on each other than you find that happening with the white. But whichever way it is, it's still not on. It's still, because I'm part of a group called Street Fathers. So I'm out here patrolling these hotspot areas, not just for black youngsters, but for all young people that we step into. And I think we've got to stop putting it down to race. And I see it more of a class thing. That's what's going on the street, because it's generally poor people that are actually caught up, whatever they're from a minority group or they're from the poor white background. It doesn't matter. They're still classed the same and they're treated the same. So I'm saying we've got to get away from race and let's put it back down to where it is. There's a disconnect between the very wealthy and the very poor. Yeah. And that's where the violence seems to be predominantly heading on the poor side with poor people.
Ken, we've seen in the wake of the riots how swiftly we can get people through the courts and even in prison. I mean, one bloke who punched a copper in Southport was banged up for 3 years within 24 hours. Why can't we do the same with knife crime for people possessing knives? Surely it would eradicate it overnight.
I don't know about eradicating overnight. I don't think about eradicating at all, because what you've got to understand is the fear factor. If someone don't feel safe, and that's what the young people tell me, they carry a knife because they don't feel safe without it. But I often tell them they're more likely to become a victim of violent crime by carrying that knife. And at the very least, when we say that people have been locked up, if you're under 18, you can be repeatedly being stopped and searched and found with a knife, and you still would not get a custodial sentence. You'll get tagged, you'll get all sorts of excuses why not to lock you up. But my thing is simply this. Also, just locking people up is not the answer. It's about changing their mindset. It's about growing their emotional intelligence.
I don't know, Ken.
And self-esteem.
I partly agree with that, but if you look at New York in the 2000s, Rudy Giuliani, the mayor, the broken window policy, you go to prison for anything as simple as breaking a window, petty theft, and crime was eradicated. I get your point about changing the mindset, because why are these kids and young adults thinking of hurting people with knives anyway? What possesses you? How do you have it in you as a human being to stick a knife into someone? But as a consequence of that behaviour, I think you just need to be banged up straight away in the same fashion we've seen these rioters banged up straight away.
I feel also you've got the boot camp. I like the army-style kind of boot camp, short, sharp shock treatment that can work for some, but first offenders. But what we can't have is there can't be no penalties for being caught with a knife. There's no excuse for anyone to have a knife and out here saying that they've got it for their own protection, because their mindset will say that they will use it on anyone that they get into any sort of confrontation with for the slightest excuse. And as I said, my deepest sympathy goes out with the family affected by the murders of the 3 youngsters. Absolutely unfathomable. Can't understand, can't get my head around that. And it's been done by another juvenile, which is just, again, you know, what's going on? But there's a lot of mental illness in our community called care in the community that is not working. And we need to address this. And there's a lot of people smoking this strong skunk and taking Class A, and it's driving them mad. And I think there's a lot of underground things that's causing people to act in this way.
OK. Ken Hines, former chair of the Haringey Independent Stop and Search Minority Group, thank you very much for joining us. Have a good night at work as well. Stay safe. Yeah, to my panel now, Diana, Lisa, Benedict. I read that statement, or the tribute from the family of B.B. King earlier in Southport, and just describing how the sister saw her younger sister being knifed to death. I mean, it brought me to... I was trying to hold back tears, quite frankly, Diana.
Oh, it's unbelievable, isn't it? And that little girl's got that image for the rest of her life.
Oh.
That family, it's just dreadful. I do believe in stop and search.
Yeah, did you get my point, Lisa, about zero tolerance? Again, we can deal with these rioters so quickly. Why can't we deal with people possessing knives?
No, I do get your point, but I thought that Ken actually, he's a guy who knows this stuff. He knows, he's on the streets with people, and he knows this stuff, and he is right about young people, particularly, and he's right about class. But it's poor working class boys actually, and it's across the country. I live in an area where there's a lot of white working class boys. They carry knives as well. So what I think we've got to do I think there needs to be stop and search? I think there probably does now, and I've been against that for my whole life, actually.
Yeah, but Benedict, it's racist, isn't it, stop and search?
No, I don't think it is, given that actually the victims tend to be from those ethnic minority communities as well. Actually, it's about saving these boys.
Well, Ken didn't seem to think so.
Well, that may be his opinion, but ultimately I tend to take a very zero-tolerance approach on this. A knife is the oldest creation in human history, be it carved out of flint, whatever it is. Everybody knows, from an evolutionary perspective, what it does, what it's for. I don't buy any of this about, protection, this, that and the other. If you're carrying a knife, you know what it does. If you're carrying a zombie knife or a machete, you absolutely know what that is. I think that there should be very long custodial sentences. Not a couple of years, 10, 15 years minimum for that sort of thing.
Completely agree. It's very scary being on the streets these days, and not least for journalists and reporters. Let me play you this clip now of our man Charlie Peters, our reporter, who attended the pro-migration, anti-racism march in London today. Take a look at this.
Don't touch me! Don't touch me! I will... He's touching me!
Film it, Stevie. Film it. Get stuff. Get back. Get back. I'm not getting back. My job is your safety. No. Yeah. Is that your...
Good on Charlie. I mean, he's quite a burly kid, so he can look after himself. But it's frightening for even journalists just reporting on marches these days. You don't know who's going to be doing what and holding what.
He's just out there doing his job, and all that happens. Awful.
Yeah, I think we've got to be very careful now about how we manage free speech and who is allowed to sort of go on the streets and who isn't, and it seems now that that's what's happening.
I also think there's something incredibly toxic about the way we talk about the free press in this country. There seems to be, it's almost accepted that people on the left can talk about things like GBNews, The Mail, Talk Radio, they can talk about The Sun, almost the people that work for them as sort of a lower class of journalists, as separate, so big, and they talk about, the Murdoch press, they talk about this, that and the other. They talk about it as a nefarious, evil thing, when actually, as you say, it's just people doing their jobs, just trying to be objective about it, and the fact that people feel it's acceptable to talk and to dehumanise journalists in that way, that's how you get situations like today when people feel that it's OK to assault a certain journalist based on what outlet they work for.
Yeah, not just me, but you should see the abuse I get online and other people, other journalists. I mean, I'm not going to play the victim and cry about it because it's part and parcel of the job, I guess, but it does make you wonder when you're out on the streets and people do recognise me and colleagues, and 100% of the time so far, touch wood, it's all been great, supportive comments, but you wonder if there's going to be some nutter hiding around the corner, outside the office. You never know, God forbid. Anyway, we move on. Thank you, panel. Up next, the Olympics was plunged further into chaos last night as gender row boxer Emaine Khalif scooped gold, of course they did, in the women's final. Emaine failed a gender test just a few years ago, so the question is, why did Olympic bosses let them compete in a female division? This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. Back in a tick.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we go through Sunday, it's going to be warm with plenty of sunshine, turning hotter even on Monday with the risk of some thunderstorms. Looking at the bigger picture, we had this waving front through today, bringing quite a lot of cloud, but high pressure will become more established as we go through Sunday. But back to tonight, we've still got a legacy of some cloud across parts of the southwest and definitely across parts of the English Channel too. But elsewhere, clear spells developing, any showers across Scotland generally fading, and under the clear skies it will turn quite fresh in rural spots, but in the south a quite muggy and uncomfortable night to come, with temperatures here holding up at 16 to 18 degrees. So through the start of Sunday morning then, plenty of sunshine first thing across parts of Scotland, still with the risk of this odd shower further towards the north. Across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, plenty of sunshine, perhaps turning a bit hazy with some high level cloud. And then further towards the south, there's still quite a bit of cloud around, should stay largely dry, and as we go through the day, that cloud should start breaking up, lifting and moving back towards the coast, but there may just be some fog still lingering here. Elsewhere though, plenty of sunshine on offer, and it's going to be feeling warm and humid as well, especially in the south. We could see temperatures rising here, 27, possibly 29 degrees, but elsewhere even reaching up to 20 to 22 degrees. As we go through Monday, we've got low pressure dominating, bringing some heavy thundery rain northeastwards, affecting Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, so expect some frequent lightning here. Elsewhere, largely dry, plenty of sunshine. It's going to be feeling hot and humid. In the south, we could see temperatures rising up to 32, possibly 33 degrees, and then turning fresher Tuesday and Wednesday.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. Now, did you see it last night? Gender row boxer Emaine Khalif won gold in the women's welterweight title in Paris. Khalif, of course, has been at the centre of a media storm, with reports suggesting the boxer possesses male XY chromosomes, as well as having excess testosterone. With me now is my panel, journalist and political commentator Benedict Spence, anarchist and academic Dr Lisa McKenzie, and journalist and model Diana Moran. And panel, just breaking in the last 30 minutes or so, the other gender row Olympian, who was the Taiwanese boxer, going by the name of
Yang
Ting, they have also won gold.
Oh,
so,
really?
There we go.
The two of them.
A bit of a problem for the IOC. The IOC, of course, just to remind you at home, they said... So the Boxing Federation, years ago, did tests on these two athletes, and they said they had XY chromosomes. So apparently, according to them, they're blokes. But the IOC, the Olympic Committee, they said, if you've got an F in your passport, if it says female, you're female. That's fine. What does this say about the state of our sport?
But aren't there hermaphrodites who are born with female bits and bloke bits as well?
Yes.
And that's the way they are.
But you think these two are?
I think the one that we first started talking about is, yes.
But they apparently have XY chromosomes, so how's that? I mean, if say this person was died and mummified and found 3,000 years in the future, they do some tests and look at the chromosomes and say, oh, this is a guy, this is a bloke, surely. So on what planet?
I'm totally confused by it, because as far as her family and everybody at the time was concerned, she was born a woman. She's grown up as a woman.
I'm confused as well, Diana, so that's both of us. Lisa,
I do think it is difficult for us mere mortals who probably don't. We don't know. I don't know how many chromosomes we're supposed to have or what they're supposed to be. I'm not a medical
What's your
doctor.
chromosomes, Lisa?
I've got no idea. I mean, I don't know. So I'm not. This is why I'm not gonna sort of go out on one side or another on
No,
this
I'm not
because I
either.
don't know. Because I don't know enough about this. Do I think there is something amiss here? Yes, I do. Do I think that the IOC are to blame? I do. But I'm not going to blame this person. I'm not going to blame them.
No,
they come from, Khalif, she comes from Algeria. They come from Algeria. They wouldn't have had the opportunities to find out who they were. That's what I think.
But come on, she's been right up the top of the boxing business. She has had the wherewithal to find out all these things.
Benedict, no one is blaming these boxers and saying you're an absolute state. What are you doing? But the concern is if they do possess physical abilities, which it gives them an unfair advantage. We're not just talking about curling here or golf. We're talking about combat sport, boxing.
Strength.
What's your take?
I mean, first of all, congratulations, chaps. It's one of those where I don't think it's beyond the remit of the IOC to come up with new parameters, given that it is a combat sport. They already separate people based on weight. Well, you can measure punch force as well. Perhaps they will also need a separate category for that, because that's actually the claim here. It's not, in fact, that Imran Khalif or the other one are walking around with male genitalia or anything like that. It's the force of the punch that actually forced Angela Carini to withdraw, and a couple of the others to say as well, look, this is very unfair. And this was why it was raised during the World Championships before. It was the punch force that was making other competitors go, I can't actually do this, it's unfair.
She said she'd never been punched as hard in her life.
And she's a Neapolitan police officer, so that's saying a lot, actually, in her day-to-day job. So, yeah, it's one of those where I think, ultimately, given that this is a sport that has now attracted 2 people who are in this condition in 1 year, that can't just be a fluke. It's obviously going to be something that keeps on happening, that this is a sport that rewards people who have XY chromosomes and therefore are stronger. If that is going to be the case, the IOC are either going to have a separate category based on chromosomes or based on punch strength, and I think that would be a fairer way of doing it than going either, they can absolutely compete with people who have got much less strength, or they can never compete at all.
What a mess. I think it's a massive headache for the IOC. I mean, I think the powers that be at the IOC probably hoping that they lost those finals and didn't win the gold medals, but their living nightmares come true and they both bagged gold. Imran Khalif has filed a formal complaint after the Olympics, citing being the victim of online harassment. That's according to her lawyer today. She said, all that is being said about me on social media is immoral. I want to change the minds of people around the world. Khalif, who won gold, of course, in the welterweight category on Friday, along with Taiwan's Lin Yu-ting, has been in the spotlight at the Games in a dispute that has dominated headlines and, of course, been the subject of heated social media debates. Khalif's lawyer, Nabil Boudi, told Reuters the complaint was filed on Friday. Any sympathy, Benedict? Playing the victim?
I think, honestly, if you've won an Olympic gold, you just sort of brush it off. But obviously this person...
Brush it off?
Obviously this person has taken it very personally.
I think she is a victim, actually.
Yeah, of what?
I think she is a victim because whatever we think about her, or them, she's a person and she has had a lot of heat over the last few weeks. I mean, and you put a person at the centre of that. She's not she's not a cartoon.
Sure.
She's actually a person.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I have some sympathy.
I agree with you. During Philip Schofield's troubles last year, even Hugh Edwards, I said that regardless of what's gone on, I'd try and put myself in their shoes and think, God, they must be going through a pretty tough time, regardless of whether I think they're male or female.
Yeah.
But I do think that we're going down a direction where, again, we're talking about potentially, that a complaint's been made based on what people are saying. We're talking about policing, again, what people are saying, what is acceptable, what isn't. It is entirely possible for adult human beings to put their phones down, to not go online, to not read these things that people are saying. I would have thought that would have gotten...
daily.
Yes, I think if you're an Olympic boxer, that's absolutely...
Life goes on even without it, I promise you.
I train in a boxing gym in Nottingham, and I can't even tell you what they are saying in that gym.
Oh, really? What about the 2 Olympians?
Yeah.
Oh, what do they say? Come on.
Some boxers, they are boxers, it's a boxing gym, look at it and go, in 3 seconds, she moves like a man.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of thing.
Well, there we go. Look, you don't need a weatherman to tell you it's raining outside, but who knows? Dana, just last word to you. A general view on the Olympics. Have you enjoyed it? Have you been watching it?
I've loved it. I haven't been able to watch it as much as I'd like to because I've been travelling around the country a bit this week. But yes, I mean, I was an athlete all those years ago. I was a hurdler. Hey, do you know I hurdled in the junior Somerset Junior Championships all those years ago? I was down on the starting blocks, always winning.
I can imagine.
The hurdles, and then I was down there. Who the hell was this? This girl ran past me. Mary Bignall Rand, who won the first gold
Did
Olympic.
you race her? Did you?
Yeah.
Did you win?
No, until then I was winning everything. Suddenly I wasn't.
Oh, well, you of course. Is it the Green Goddess you were known as?
Oh, yes.
Back in the day.
Yes.
You were,
Not then.
You were a fitness icon nonetheless, Diana. Panel, thank you very much. Right, coming up on the rest of the show, at 10 p.m, Boris Johnson, of all people, sticks the knife. And it gets worse for Keir Starmer. Bombshell new polling from the Daily Telegraph shows the PM's popularity has plummeted off the back of his handling of the riots. No surprise, if you ask me. Neil and Christine Hamilton join me next. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Football and gambling can go hand in hand and cause long-term problems. New figures show that young adults aged between 16 and 24 who have bet over the last year are more likely to report mental health issues compared to those in older age groups.
And joining us now to discuss this is Matt Burgess, who is a former gambling addict and now helps those to deal with their own gambling issues.
Yeah, I think gambling is one of those things that is so accessible now. Everyone's got a kind of mobile phone in their pocket, walk around with a kind of 24-hour casino, if you like. So I think it's really important that people realise that we have to sort of recognise that is a month of quite condensed gambling, and we don't want people to sort of carry that on into their everyday life, because that's when it can become really risky and it could become addictive.
I had no idea, though, that it was linked to first-time gambling. For the first time, people might be able to pick up and have a go. And then it doesn't end there. It goes on, because by then you've got the bug. Is that how it works?
You've got to remember, for things like the Euros, the World Cup, so you get a lot more people watching football and therefore potentially betting on football.
May I ask you about how severe your own gambling addiction got?
Well, look, I think there was a couple of touch points for me where I realised that things were getting out of hand. There were some times at university where, I kind of thought, I'm definitely doing this a bit too much, but, kind of thought maybe it would move on once I left, but it didn't. It did follow me. And then, I got to points where I was at my worst gambling 16, 17 hours a day. I was spending huge amounts of money. It can spiral out of control very, very quickly, and that was the important thing that we want to highlight is, what can start as fun can become very, very dangerous in a sense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Ben Leo Tonight on GB News. Now, the Prime Minister's polling ratings have plummeted since the outbreak of riots in the UK. That's according to a bombshell new Daily Telegraph poll that dropped earlier tonight. Sir Keir has been criticised for his response to the protests, including the decision not to hold a Cobra meeting until a week after the outbreak. The PM has also been slammed, of course, by US tech giant Elon Musk for two-tier policing. Joining me now are the Hamiltons, Neil and Christine. Good evening to you both. First question.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Ben.
Hello. The most important question of all, are you boozing tonight? There we go. What have you got, Neil? That looks like a whiskey.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Christine?
Hi, British.
Mine is just plain white wine, but I can see my cheeks are already a bit pink.
Oh, you're having a hot flush, Christine.
No, I'm afraid I'm far too old for that.
Listen, what do you make of this new poll showing Sir Keir Starmer's popularity is plummeting? Is there anything to take from that? It is a Daily Telegraph poll, of course.
Of course it is, but I mean, talk about a short honeymoon. I mean, I'm beginning to feel sorry for the guy. I mean, he's only been in, a month and 2 days, and you would think that his popularity might have stayed a bit higher. But frankly, he's the architect of his own misfortune. As somebody once said, I think I read it today, that he's an analog leader in a digital age. He's out of his depth. He doesn't know what to do. He's dithering while cities in the shape of police cars are burning on our streets. He didn't even have the oomph to say, I am not going on holiday. We were allowed to speculate for 2 or 3 days. Is he going to have a holiday? Isn't he going to have a holiday? Why didn't he come out and say, of course, I'm not going on holiday, which was the obvious thing to do? I mean, it is extraordinary. I mean, he's popular. But don't forget, 8 out of 10 people in this country did not vote for him in the first place. So he's deeply unpopular with most of the country before he even starts. So no, I'm not surprised at all.
He did say tonight he wasn't going on holiday. I think the PM spokesman confirmed that he wasn't. And I'm not sure if that was in direct response to Boris Johnson calling for him to be banished to some Med Island somewhere. Neil,
I think it'd be a good thing if he was sent on a permanent holiday, don't you? At least that's Rishi Sunak's decision, because he's apparently in California at the moment, eating in Michelin-starred restaurants. So, I mean, of course, Keir Starmer has gone through the floor because he was on the floor in the general election. He's now gone below it in public popularity. But Rishi Sunak, especially the leader of the opposition, where is the opposition in all this? The official opposition? We've heard absolutely nothing from the Conservative Party at all. And this just shows that the mainstream political parties are totally out of touch with the people of this country. Labour has long since abandoned its working class roots, certainly with the white working class. Keir Starmer doesn't speak for people across the breadth and length of the United Kingdom, because Labour is now totally associated with identity politics groups and largely associated with migration. So I'm not surprised that Keir Starmer's popularity ratings are plummeting down to the low 20s because he never did actually chime with the majority of people in this country at all.
Christine, Boris called him the human bollard.
Oh, I mean, honestly, Boris's intervention, I honestly thought it was a joke, and I was expecting somebody to whip their wig off, and it turned out to be some comedian. It just shows, frankly, how Boris, to a very large degree, was unfit for office. That was an absurd intervention. But I don't think Keir Starmer understands yet the unrest in this country. It isn't race riots, it's the white working class and millions of people in this country who live in our big cities who feel they are being left behind. All this talk about levelling up, I know that was the Tories, but, all this talk about levelling up, as far as they're concerned, it simply hasn't happened. All that happens to them is they get pushed to the back of the housing queue. The housing queue gets longer and longer and longer as more immigrants get pushed into the top, and they see them being given the social housing that they thought was going to be theirs.
I'm going to have to cut you off there, Christine, not because I'm censoring you, of course, but we're fast running out of time. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. Enjoy your drinks.
Pleasure. Bye.
Bye-bye. Coming up at 10 p.m, Boris Johnson, of course, we've just spoken about it, sticks the knife into Keir Starmer by urging him to go on holiday and have a long, hard think about the mess he's making in Britain.
Hi, folks. My message to the Prime Minister this week is man up, Starmer.
Here's your weather.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we go through Sunday, it's going to be warm with plenty of sunshine, turning hotter even on Monday with the risk of some thunderstorms. Looking at the bigger picture, we had this waving front through today, bringing quite a lot of cloud, but high pressure will become more established as we go through Sunday. But back to tonight, we've still got a legacy of some cloud across parts of the southwest and definitely across parts of the English Channel too. But elsewhere, clear spells developing, any showers across Scotland generally fading, and under the clear skies, it will turn quite fresh in rural spots, but in the south, a quite muggy and uncomfortable night to come, with temperatures here holding up at 16 to 18 degrees. So through the start of Sunday morning then, plenty of sunshine first thing across parts of Scotland, still with the risk of this odd shower further towards the north. Across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, plenty of sunshine, perhaps turning a bit hazy with some high level cloud. And then further towards the south, there's still quite a bit of cloud around, should stay largely dry, and as we go through the day, that cloud should start breaking up, lifting and moving back towards the coast, but there may just be some fog still lingering here. Elsewhere though, plenty of sunshine on offer, and it's going to be feeling warm and humid as well, especially in the south. We could see temperatures rising here, 27, possibly 29 degrees, but elsewhere even reaching up to 20 to 22 degrees. As we go through Monday, we've got low pressure dominating, bringing some heavy thundery rain northeastwards, affecting Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, so expect some frequent lightning here. Elsewhere, largely dry, plenty of sunshine. It's going to be feeling hot and humid. In the south, we could see temperatures rising up to 32, possibly 33 degrees, and then turning fresher Tuesday and Wednesday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could become the next giveaway winner with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt just a lot nicer. We went out for dinner, just enter. And you never expect to win, but I did.
Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, a daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Ben Leo. Tonight.
Hi folks, my message to the Prime Minister this week is man up, Starmer. Have some guts, face down your critics, think of your family and take a holiday now.
Time to book a holiday, Keir Starmer, and reflect on the frenzy of utter stupidity Labour's embarked on. Boris Johnson's words there in a scathing attack on the Prime Minister. Meanwhile, the King calls for unity and understanding in the wake of the riots, but is he just oblivious to the concerns of worried Brits? And, ding dong, who's at the door?
Name please. Yeah, love you. Yeah, if you want to come in.
Police continue to round up rioters who unleashed violence across Britain. And
Kamala is grossly incompetent and, in my opinion, has a very low IQ. But we'll find out about her IQ during the debate, OK? Let's find out about her IQ.
Trump continues to savage Kamala Harris, but is he at risk of blowing the presidency? On my panel tonight, it's model and broadcaster Diana Moran, anarchist and academic Dr. Lisa McKenzie, and political journalist and commentator Benedict Spence. Tomorrow's newspaper front pages are on the way too, and there's some bangers promised to be hitting the headlines. Strap yourselves in, Britain. Let's do this. Boris drops a Keir Starmer bombshell next.
Very good evening to you. Back to Ben in just a few minutes, but first a look at the headlines tonight. And the parents of BB King, one of 3 young girls killed in the Southport stabbings, have described her as full of joy, of light and of love. And they've also revealed that her older sister saw the attack at last Monday's dance class, but managed to escape. Well, that comes as anti-racism demonstrators have taken to the streets of London today, countering almost 2 weeks of anti-immigration protests and riots across England. That's after misinformation about the Southport suspect sparked a wave of often violent riots. In the capital, thousands of campaigners were seen carrying signs supporting refugees and opposing racism and Islamophobia. Authorities hope the violence is subsiding, but thousands of specialist officers are still deployed on the streets this weekend. Well, more than 740 people have now been arrested over those riots, including a 16-year-old boy who's admitted to stealing £19,000 worth of vapes during unrest in Liverpool. The court heard today how he was seen on CCTV with a group who pulled a police officer off his bike before attacking him. The teenager later used an electric scooter to then ram a shop window and help himself to the e-cigarettes. He'll be sentenced next month. In other news, a 32-year-old man has been charged over a shooting in East London in May, which left a 9-year-old girl seriously injured. She's still in hospital in a stable condition after the attack at a restaurant in Dalston. Javon Riley from Farnborough appeared in court this morning, accused of 4 counts of attempted murder. He has been remanded in custody and will appear at the Old Bailey next month. International news. And, the Foreign Secretary says he's appalled by an Israeli airstrike on a school that was sheltering displaced Palestinians in central Gaza. According to Palestinian health officials, at least 80 people were killed in that strike, though Israel disputes that claim. Instead, they say forces were targeting a Hamas command centre at the complex. David Lammy's now calling for an immediate ceasefire in the region, while the EU's foreign policy chief has condemned what he's called the massacre. 2 Chinese warships have passed through UK waters twice in just 3 weeks. The Royal Navy says a British frigate kept a close watch as they travelled to and from Russia. They were also assisted by vessels from France and from Belgium. Well, an investigation has now been launched after a plane crashed last night in the state of Sao Paulo in Brazil, killing all 61 people on board. The black box was found late last night with people trying to recover some of the flight data. There were 57 passengers and 4 crew understood to be on board. If you're watching on television, you can see here the dramatic scenes of that plane spiralling out of control, falling through the air and crashing through trees, eventually and very sadly ending in a large plume of smoke. That investigation continuing. And in the US, Celine Dion's team has slammed Donald Trump for using her iconic song, My Heart Will Go On, without permission at a campaign rally in Montana. Dion's management and record label stated that the use of the song was, they say, in no way authorised, adding that the singer doesn't endorse the actions. Well, Trump has faced similar backlash from other artists, including Aerosmith and the Rolling Stones, for using their music without consent. Dion's fans and the public have expressed support for her stance on social media. And one last look at the Olympics tonight. Team GB have added 6 more medals to their total on the penultimate day of the Paris Games. There were 2 silvers, one for Caden Cunningham in the taekwondo, and the other was historic as Kate Shortman and Izzy Thorpe won Great Britain's first ever prize in artistic swimming at the Games. 3 bronze medals came in the athletics, with Georgia Bell finishing 3rd in the women's 1500 metres, followed by the men's and the women's lineups in the 4x400 metre relays. And earlier, diver Noah Williams claimed bronze in his men's 10 metre platform final. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Now, maybe I'm not the one to be accusing people of looking knackered or feeling tired, but let's be frank, Sir Keir Starmer has looked tired, rattled and dazed over the past few weeks. I dread to think what he'll look like in 5 years if he carries on bulldozing his way through his term in government, and that's, of course, if he makes it that far. Boris Johnson was the latest to stick the knife in today with a scathing attack on the Prime Minister. This is how Boris announced his new column in the Daily Mail.
Hi folks, my message to the Prime Minister this week is man up, Starmer. Have some guts, face down your critics, think of your family and take a holiday now.
Actually, he doesn't look that fresh either, but I'm no Boris fan, let me just make that clear. But after reading the contents of his column on Starmer, I think taking a holiday to recover from that all-out verbal attack in the column today is the best thing the Prime Minister can do right now. Boris said in his piece, "Now is the moment to go on holiday, Prime Minister, because it's become ever clearer over the past week that your presence has made no difference whatsoever to the disturbances, or, if anything, made things marginally worse. The police have got the thing under control, as they always do. The thugs are now being processed through the courts. Rather than holding any more meetings and giving any more of your stunned mullet press conferences, it's time for you to recharge the batteries. You need to scrunch the sand between your toes, Keir Starmer, squint at the sea and think. You need to reflect on the events of the past month and the whole strategy of the Labour government, because it's starting to look like a frenzy of utter stupidity." Now, I'm not sure Boris Johnson is the man to be throwing stones about a frenzied government, but that said, he makes many good points about how the new Labour government has already lost a hell of a lot of goodwill. Cancelling the Tories' prison-building programme while releasing thousands of serious criminals before they've completed their sentences. Cancelling the Rwanda plan and having no immediate backup. Announcing that around 100,000 asylum seekers were going to be given an amnesty instead of being deported. Closing the Bibi Stockholm, the Home Secretary's woke suggestion that we should start calling illegal migrants irregular migrants instead, and caving into junior doctors and giving them bumper pay rises, opening, of course, the floodgates for every other man and his dog to demand the same thing, stripping pensioners of their winter fuel payments and scrapping Conservative plans to trim Whitehall by axing 66,000 jobs. And let's not forget the surprise, that never was, in the budget, that there was £20 billion missing. The question begs, is this going to be the most destructive government Britain has ever seen? And as for Boris, he tells Sir Keir, go on holiday now. Don't come back till you've bucked your ideas up. Joining me now is former Conservative MP and my former presenting partner here on GB News, Miriam Cates. Good evening, Miriam. It was a nice surprise to see you with me this evening, because I was texting you a few hours ago asking if you'd come on in a few weeks, but here you are. There we go.
Well, I couldn't be with you physically. I'm here in Sheffield, but I'm very happy to appear remotely. But lovely to see you too.
Yeah, that will do. No worries. What do you make of Boris's column? It was pretty scathing, wasn't it?
To typically entertaining, as Boris Johnson always is, but I think it was a bit rich because actually, if it is true that the root of these riots, that the discontent is largely about immigration, something that certainly the scale of which has not had democratic consent, then unfortunately, a large amount of the fault for that does lie at the door of Boris Johnson and his government. Certainly, immigration, non-European immigration, absolutely soared to record levels under his government. So whilst you might be absolutely correct that Sir Keir Starmer is not speaking honestly about what's going on and certainly not offering any solutions, it's also true that a lot of the problems have been caused by the Boris Johnson government. So I think it's a little bit rich coming from him.
Do you think Boris has a future in politics? Do you think he's looking at maybe the first 5, 6, 7 weeks, however far we are in now of the Labour government, and thinking there's a chance here maybe for me to come back at some point?
Possibly, who knows? I mean, there's a lot of water to go under the bridge over the next 5 years. And certainly, as I said, he's very entertaining. He's a brilliant communicator. Although he clearly had weaknesses, he also was a massive election winner for the Conservative Party, and that won't be forgotten in a hurry. But I think he's right that the government is already looking tired. And I think there are kind of two reflections to make on that. Firstly, Labour have never governed before in the social media age, and I think they're seeing what that means and what it looks like to be scrutinised 24 hours a day by people across the globe, let's be honest, people like Elon Musk wading in on the government's decisions. But also what an enormous problem we have with the levels of immigration that we've had, not just what that means for community cohesion, for British culture, whatever that is, but also what it means for democracy when people have voted time and time again for 20 years now for lower immigration and no government has been able to deliver that. And that does beg the question, what is the point of democracy if it can't deliver what people ask for?
Yes, indeed. And on that point, I was mooting the other day saying that I don't think, based off the performances of Keir Starmer since being elected, and primarily his, as Boris put it, well, how did he describe it? Sort of startled, deer in the headlights press conferences. I mean, Starmer, for me, looked rattled, he looked fearful, authoritarian, at least as well. Do you think Starmer will last 5 years?
On the strength of numbers, in terms of his parliamentary majority, he ought to. But I remember very clearly in 2019, when I was elected, along with an enormous number of new Conservative MPs, everybody saying that Boris Johnson would be Prime Minister for 10 years. And I think politics is just so much more volatile than it used to be, since Brexit particularly, partly because of social media, partly because of the problems we now face. So although he looks very safe on paper, he has a huge majority, anything could happen. And I think it would have been a shock to him and the whole Labour government what's happened in just the first few weeks of their rule. They're not actually responsible for what's happened in the lead up to these riots. I mean, certainly they could have handled some things better, but really the seeds of this upset has been sown a long time ago. So I think they will be very shocked at the kind of what government means and at the responsibility they have. And certainly I think a holiday is a probably good idea.
Yeah, I mean, you know more than anyone else as a former MP. I could perhaps envision a scenario in a year's time or something when his popularity... I mean, that Daily Telegraph poll tonight is showing that his popularity has gone down again in the wake of the riots. I could maybe predict, at a guess, there could be some sort of Conservative-style coup going on. You know, the infighting will start, but it remains to be seen. Miriam Cates, thank you for joining me tonight, and hopefully see you soon.
Thanks, Ben.
Let's get the thoughts of my panel tonight. Journalist and political commentator Benedict Spence, anarchist and academic Dr. Lisa McKenzie, and journalist, model and fitness legend Diana Moran. Welcome back, panel. Diana, let's start with you. Boris Johnson, what did you make of his column? I think, as I said, I'm not a massive Boris fan, but he is a very good writer. And he got me chuckling a couple of times.
Yes, well, I read his column each weekend in the Mail. As you say, I think as a journalist, he's fantastic. And he's got such a good turn of phrase that he sums it all up and makes you put a smile on your face. You know it's really, really serious. But I think in this instance, he's got Starmer quite right.
Lisa, do you think Boris Johnson's popularity is perhaps overestimated now? Is there much goodwill for him anymore?
I don't think there is, actually. I mean, I watched that. I've read the column and I watched what he was saying. And we need a voice that sort of challenges the authoritarianism that is happening under Starmer. And Boris is sort of making light of that. And it annoyed me because we need some political voice against this authoritarianism, against sort of, you know, is justice being done when someone is arrested on Wednesday and locked up on Thursday for 6 years or 4 years or 2 years? I don't think it is, but we need somebody to be able to say that. We also need somebody to be brave enough and say the unrest that we've seen over the last week may not be about immigration. It might be about poverty, and it might be about inequality, and it might be about disadvantage, but nobody is saying any of this, no politician. So as much as, you know, it's quite fun that Boris is having a go at him on holiday with his sunglasses on, it's not helpful.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where Boris was, but I mean, again, I'm a fine one to talk about people looking tired, but Boris didn't look in.
And he was on holiday.
He was looking terrible.
Benedict, what's your thoughts on Bojo?
I think Boris Johnson is carving out a career now, building it back up as a columnist, as being a commentator, because I think he should understand that his political life is over.
You don't think he's ever coming back?
I don't think that there is the desire for him is the problem. I think people don't actually feel that, you know, the sort of the feel-good character that Boris Johnson was able to marry with the promise of being able to get Brexit done and levelling up. Brexit has not really been pursued in the way that many people hoped that it would be, and levelling up just didn't happen at all. And then, as a result of COVID policies, his government landed us in a catastrophic economic situation. His character alone is not enough to overcome that. I think people will be prepared to forgive him the character failures if he reinvents himself, goes back to just being a columnist, and he sticks at it, and he writes and he writes and he does appearances. But as a politician, I don't think we're going to get the same sort of sense of, you know, some people like John Major, Gordon Brown, they were able to sort of rehabilitate their images a little bit. Blair, not so much, for obvious reasons. I don't think Boris Johnson's going to be that guy, ultimately. I think there are too many black marks against, you know, on his copybook for people to go, he might have a point about Starmer, but I don't trust him, ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I was never a big fan of Boris. I think he was stitched up with Partygate, and you could see the internal Tory party coup. I mean, any idiot could see what was going on there. However, Diana Moran, do you think Boris's criticisms of Starmer is going to have any sort of political cut-through? Is Keir Starmer going to be in Downing Street tonight thinking, oh, goodness me, Boris is on the attack now? Is he going to be bothered?
I think he should be bothered because there are many Conservatives who still have a fond memory of Boris and read his column quite a lot, are not fond of Starmer, and this will just add fuel to that fire.
Yeah, I think we need... I mean, I'm asking where the Lib Dems are. Because normally, wouldn't they, you know...
It's a question everybody famously asks.
Wouldn't normally the Lib Dems be sort of saying, you know, free speech is important and, you know, authoritarian rule is not a good thing? And where are they?
Yeah.
What I would say...
All down in the south-east, Lisa, down Eastbourne and Hastings.
What I would say on the subject of Starmer is he should be concerned because if you look at what the seats were that Boris Johnson was able to win, those former Labour seats, fabled red wall seats, what's happening now, I know that people in London are very keen to point out that the country is all for unified and all peace and love and all that sort of thing, but in the north of England and in the Midlands and in other parts of the UK, these places that Boris Johnson was able to take seats away from Labour, a lot of this animosity, a lot of this outcry is coming because, as Lisa says, it's not just about immigration, it is also about the state that people find themselves in.
Yeah.
How are those communities going to react to Keir Starmer kicking in the door, arresting their sons and their brothers and their fathers, locking them up for how many years, for tweets, for just being there? Are those communities really going to vote Labour at the next general election? I don't think a lot of them are. I think they're going to remember that. But I don't think a Boris Johnson clown is the sort of person to win those people back. It's much more a firebrand that you...
And he hasn't helped us older people by immediately, within the first 3 weeks, taking away our fuel allowance.
I know, yeah.
I mean, what's all that about?
Yeah, Rich, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, had a tweet unearthed some years ago saying how heartbroken she was that a constituent, you know, had to choose between heating or eating this winter. And what did they do within a couple of days of getting in? Whoop, nope, none for you.
Disgusting.
Anyway, you could be joining Boris Johnson or maybe Sir Keir Starmer on holiday because it's the final 3 weeks of our £30,000 Great British giveaway. There's still plenty of time to get your entry in to win. What would you do with all that cash? Here's the details you need for a chance to win.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on a chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Very good luck to you. Lisa McKenzie, just during that VT, was saying, oh, gosh, it's all so depressing, isn't it? I don't think you were talking about the giveaway. I think you were more talking about the state of the country.
It's depressing for us because we're not going to get the giveaway. There's somebody else.
Yeah.
Right, coming up, I'll have all of tomorrow's front pages hot off the press imminently. And next, the King set the right tone in his message on the riots. Royal and Showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield joins me next to discuss that and more after the break. This is Ben Leo on GB News. Come back in a tick.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said storm. You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
You'll relate to this one. We've all been there, haven't we? Tensions high in the car as you head off on the latest adventure or holiday during the summer break.
Now, with the average family set to spend about 3.5 hours a week together in the car driving on the roads during the holidays, new research has shown that our relationships could be tested to the limit.
Yes, figures show that 21% are having arguments for simple things like the driver going the wrong way, which we were saying is not actually very simple. That's very serious.
I was going to say that. I'm surprised it's just 21%. Yeah. So if I was going the wrong way down the road,
you'd know about
it. You'd hear from me.
A further 20% squabbling over how their partner drives, yes, and 25% admitting to being more prone to rowing when their kids are misbehaving. It's a lot to deal with, isn't it?
Fair enough.
Well, we're joined now by dating and relationship coach and author Persia Lawson. Good to see you this morning, Persia. What is it about being in a car that just makes things so tense?
Well, I think it's probably quite obvious, isn't it? It's the fact that we are in a confined space, we can't go anywhere, and it can just really create so much tension and stress, especially if you and your other half or a family member, whoever you're in the car with, are going through a little bit of a tricky time. And if it's really hot outside, that doesn't help either. So inevitably, it creates a lot of irritation and bickering, I would say, from my experience.
And what is it about children? If you add children into the mix, it just makes things very, very difficult, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of, are we there yet?
Yeah.
Kicking the back seat and just squabbles, kicking the siblings. So adding children into the mix is just going to turn the heat up on that tension.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. This is Ben Leo tonight, only on GB News. Now, in the UK, King Charles called for, quote, community spirit and compassion following the disorder we've seen on the streets in recent weeks. The King's also thanks the police for their efforts to restore peace, as well as the communities who came out to counter the violence. Meanwhile, though, in the US, this evening, Celine Dion's team, the pop star, of course, has slammed Donald Trump for using her iconic song My Heart Will Go On of Titanic fame without permission at a campaign rally in Montana. Let's have a listen. So there we go. Joining me now is royal and showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield. Good morning, good evening, Kinsey. What's the time over there?
It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Ben. Good to see you.
Good afternoon to you. What do you make, first of all, of King Charles and sort of intervening, I guess, on the riots? He's got a bit of stick this side of the pond because people are saying, well, look, it's OK for you living in your palaces with all your money coming out your ears. You're out of touch, really, with the working class and the concerns of people in this country about, I mean, issues such as migration.
Yeah, I mean, I think in today's polarizing society in both of our countries, being a good leader while trying to avoid politics can feel like navigating a minefield. The king is being very careful and strategic in his reaction. He's emphasizing shared goals, focusing on the common objectives and mission of the community. I mean, he's trying to align everyone around a shared vision that transcends individual differences and encouraging transparency and open dialogue by allowing everyone to voice their opinions and concerns in a legal and productive way that doesn't jeopardize anyone's safety. And I think you can create a culture of trust where people feel heard and valued. Aside from his family's multiple cancer scares, this is the most difficult period he's had as king, and he is fully aware that the way he responds to this unrest could define him in the history books. But he's in this bizarre position in the sense that his power is limited, and he has to really trust and permit the new Labour government to take ownership. And listening to you, I imagine that that's kind of hard for him based on the direction it's taken.
What do you mean listening to me? What have I done?
No, I just think that there are a lot of legitimate questions when it comes to Keir Starmer's leadership. And the king is not in a position to sit Keir Starmer down and say, hey, I'd rather do this instead of that. His power is truly, in America, we consider the royal family these beautiful, glamorous mascots. They really, truly are so limited in what they're capable of doing over there. So I imagine that there are some concerns in the background, but he's not really in a position to voice them. He has to look supportive, and he has to navigate this very carefully.
Just very quickly before we move on to Celine Dion, what's the perception of the riots and the troubles in the UK over where you are? Is it picking up much media attention? Are people talking about it?
Very much so, and it reminds us of the George Floyd riots, which was absolutely terrifying at the time. So very much concern for your neck of the woods. People, you're seeing it distributed online and shared online. And then, you have to navigate what is misinformation and what's true. You haven't, as an individual in the States, because you are so far away, we're trying to source things 2 and 3 times to ensure that what we're seeing shared on social media is legitimate. But, I truly do pray for your community because it's devastating what's happened. And we've seen a lot, very similar things in our country. And I'm so sorry that you're dealing with this right now.
OK, thank you for those kind words. What about Celine Dion then? She's kicked off Donald Trump using My Heart Will Go On at a rally. What's going on there?
Yeah, normally I love Celine Dion. What's up, Celine? I think that this is ridiculous. And what's crazy about this, Ben, is that the people actually accused somebody of trolling Trump with this song. Like, the narrative was somebody, secretly working for Kamala that set this off to try to hint that the entire Trump campaign was on the verge of going down. So the fact that it was received that way, and then for Celine to come out and say, I'm not giving you permission to use it. I don't think the Trump team really wants to use it anyway. I think that they'll just move on and crank up something a little more rock and roll.
Yeah, Trump should use that 50 Cent song, Many Men, which lots of memes have been put over the top. But it's kind of, pretty decent. Quite apt for him, I think. Kinsey, thank you so much. Short and sweet tonight. Thank you for being with us. That was Royal and Showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield from the US. Today, Celine Dion's management team and record label Sony Music Entertainment became, well, this is what they said. They said they became aware of the unauthorised usage of the video, recording, musical performance and likeness of Celine Dion singing My Heart Will Go On at a Donald Trump JD Vance campaign rally. It's not authorised, basically, long story short. Anyway, coming up, former editor of the Sunday Mirror, Paul Connew, joins me to talk about the Met statement on the incident involving GB News reporter Charlie Peters. But next, I'll have all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press. Do not miss it. Some big stories coming up. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we go through Sunday, it's going to be warm with plenty of sunshine, turning hotter even on Monday with the risk of some thunderstorms. Looking at the bigger picture, we had this waving front through today, bringing quite a lot of cloud, but high pressure will become more established as we go through Sunday. But back to tonight, we've still got a legacy of some cloud across parts of the southwest and definitely across parts of the English Channel too, but elsewhere, clear spells developing, any showers across Scotland generally fading, and under the clear skies, it will turn quite fresh in rural spots, but in the south, a quite muggy and uncomfortable night to come, with temperatures here holding up at 16 to 18 degrees. So through the start of Sunday morning then, plenty of sunshine first thing across parts of Scotland, still with the risk of this odd shower further towards the north. Across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, plenty of sunshine, perhaps turning a bit hazy with some high level cloud. And then further towards the south, there's still quite a bit of cloud around, should stay largely dry, and as we go through the day, that cloud should start breaking up, lifting and moving back towards the coast, but there may just be some fog still lingering here. Elsewhere though, plenty of sunshine on offer, and it's going to be feeling warm and humid as well, especially in the south. We could see temperatures rising here, 27, possibly 29 degrees, but elsewhere even reaching up to 20 to 22 degrees. As we go through Monday, we've got low pressure dominating, bringing some heavy thundery rain northeastwards, affecting Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, so expect some frequent lightning here. Elsewhere, largely dry, plenty of sunshine. It's going to be feeling hot and humid. In the south, we could see temperatures rising up to 32, possibly 33 degrees, and then turning fresher Tuesday and Wednesday.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. The first papers have just dropped, hot off the press. Let's start with the Sunday Telegraph. At the bottom there, NHS staff ask men if they are pregnant before X-ray scans. Oh my gosh, the NHS X-ray operators have been told to ask men if they're pregnant before conducting scans. OK, world's gone mad. Elsewhere at the top of the Telegraph, schools to wage war on putrid fake news. We'll get stuck into that in just a sec. The Observer next. Riots will set back efforts to rebuild our broken justice system, warns Minister. And down the bottom, Kamala Harris ahead of Trump in 3 swing state polls. The Daily Star. I saw the ghost of Lemmy riding a horse and eating pizza. A ghost expert says she summoned the spirit of Motorhead's Lemmy in the afterlife, and he was eating pizza while riding a horse. He's having the time of his life in death, OK? The Sunday Mirror. Bebe's sister saw her being killed. The heartbreaking tribute from the young girl's parents, who was savagely attacked in Southport. Very moving tribute, which we covered earlier tonight. And the Sunday Express, similar story. Older sister saw horror attack on Bebe. Let's go to the Telegraph, shall we, guys? Diana, Lisa, Benedict, Spence. At the bottom, NHS staff ask men if they are pregnant before X-ray scans. Radiographers at multiple hospitals have been told they must check whether all parties aged 12 to 55 are pregnant, regardless of their sex, as part of inclusivity guidance. There we go on the screen. Diana, Maura.
Has the world gone mad?
Yes, it has.
I mean, this is just ridiculous. There's no more to say.
I mean, what are you going to say when they actually ask you?
Ask me?
Yes, because they're going to ask you.
Tell them to do one.
I mean, they're going to ask you too. So what do you think?
I'll say what? Do you think I've had a few too many lagers?
I was going to say, I think I'd take it as a sort of a hint that it's time for me to lose weight, which, might be justified. I mean, maybe this is an attempt to nudge this, and this is all a front.
In all seriousness, this is an absolute joke, isn't it?
Because it's a waste of money.
The amount of whackery, as Darren Grimes would say, wokery and waste in the NHS, and they're doing nonsense like this. Record waiting lists, or there was until recently anyway, and they're doing nonsense like this. People want to go to the NHS because they're proud of it and they can use it and they can get seen quickly without all this absolute claptrap doing the rounds.
They want to go into the NHS, they want to get an appointment. Without all this nonsense going on.
People want to feel safe as well within the NHS, don't they? They want to feel that the NHS is for them and for everybody. And,
There's a paragraph here. Radiologists told this newspaper, the Sunday Telegraph, that the measures, had left men storming out of appointments and women in tears because of invasive fertility questions. They say patients are being asked to fill out pregnancy forms stating their sex at birth, preferred name, and pronouns, there we go, full house, and read ridiculous statements about people who are born with variations. But
we're back to the boxing story that we started with.
It's just gender madness.
This is just an attempt to get waiting lists down. If that many people storm out of appointments, actually, they'll get through them a lot quicker. The next man comes in, are you pregnant? No, OK, great, he's walked out as well. Who knows? Could be very messy.
Could you imagine asking my dad that question?
What would your dad say? What's your dad's name?
Ian.
Hello, Ian.
Are you pregnant, Ian?
But can you imagine, he's in his late 70s and he's...
Well, he wouldn't, because it's aged something...
Oh, is it?
Something 15 to...
Well,
something else.
You just
because a 70-year-old man could never conceive. Don't be ridiculous.
Well, you know what? We're moving in that direction where it's maybe not ridiculous.
No, give it 10 years under, labour or something.
Medical intervention, yeah.
Benedict, you kind of you were introducing a fairly decent segue to the next story here on the Telegraph with your conspiracy theory there about.
Was I now?
So, anyway, good story. That's really interesting. Right down my street. Schools to wage war on putrid fake news. Pupils will be taught to spot conspiracy theories in curriculum revamp after riots. They'll use lessons such as English, ICT and maths to arm pupils against conspiracy theories and how to spot fake news. My question is, Lisa, a question for you. How do you know what a conspiracy theory is? Because if, for example, go back to the start of COVID, lots of people were warning about where it would end up. Months before vaccine passports were ever mentioned, many people were saying they're going to introduce some sort of papers, please document for vaccines and so on. And it did happen. So one man's conspiracy needs to become as truth.
But what we need to be teaching, what we need to be doing is actually critical thinking. That's different from looking for conspiracy theories. Critical thinking takes research, takes opinion, but also takes your own experiences as well. And actually in the universities now we're closing down humanities courses that teach critical thinking. So, if they're putting this into schools, why are they taking it out of universities?
Benedict?
Yeah, this is, I think, an attempt to instill groupthink into people. It's going to be less sort of how do you spot conspiracies, but X, Y, Z is a conspiracy. That's what people will be taught. And ultimately, a lot of this will come down to the fact that not only do you have to teach the children, you have to train the teachers. Well, you're not going to have, thousands of teachers being re-educated on how to teach a specialist critical thinking curriculum. They're going to be told, tell your children, your pupils, to look out for this, this and this and that this is wrong, because that's ultimately how these sorts of things are done. It's very dangerous. Actually, I think much of our school curriculum should already equip children with the tools to do so, critical thinking being one part, but actually things like history as well. Children study the history of propaganda. It's basically, we are obsessed with the Nazis in this country. It is one of the first things when they hit the sort of the GCSE stage of history learning that they learn about is the idea of conspiracy theories, of propaganda, things like that. Actually, we have the tools. Why do we need this? Because it's about instilling great thinking in people.
Dan, it just feels kind of this will stifle free thought and independent thinking if I mean, God forbid, teachers of all people, they indoctrinate kids with enough rubbish these days. Teachers telling kids, this is a conspiracy, don't think about that, it's nonsense. I mean, who are they to say what's a conspiracy and what's not?
Exactly, and it depends on each individual too, doesn't it? Their ideas. No, very confusing. What Dominic has said, I think, goes for me.
Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, we need critical thinking. We need critical thinkers. We need people to be able to think for themselves, look at evidence, look at opinion, and be able to think through those things and think about their own experience. And I actually think Benedict has actually made a good point about, I don't think this is going to be about looking for conspiracy theories. It's about saying which ones are the conspiracy theories. And that's not good for any of us. I'm wondering, though, now, when you sort of see this stuff, the NHS staff have to do this, teachers are going to have to do this, everyone's going to have to do something. Do you think we're all going to get fed up of this?
I mean, is this... I'd like to know, is this new guidance introduced since Labour? I mean, because if it is... If you marry it up with what I was talking about at the top of
Communism,
the show...
again.
Yeah, I mean, you said...
That's what I was thinking.
Not me, thank you. But, yeah, I mean, it's just Soviet... style.
You've got to think this way.
It's totalitarianism. It's not communism.
The thing to remember is that the Soviet Union did collapse, and so did all of the Eastern Bloc, with the exception of China.
How long did it take?
It did take a very long time, but the point is, once the system does start to break down, people go along with the lie for as long as it's convenient. But if the system doesn't work, there's only so long people can pretend for that to themselves. It's what comes afterwards that's the issue, because Eastern Europe isn't exactly having a great time of it. But the idea of trying to re-educate, reprogram people, it can only go so far if the contradictions within how the state itself work don't bring about its demise first, which they inevitably do.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, actually, whether how long is it going to take before people get sick of these sort of new... Because I work in a university and we get these new initiatives all the time, and we can never put them in place because before you've done that one, there's a new one coming along.
Well, they're just thought up by people who get given jobs such as diversity and inclusion manager. They've got nothing to do in the day, so they sit there and think, well, how can I look busy or justify my stupid NHS salary of 150k a year? Oh, OK, yeah, let's draw up some big PowerPoint presentation and policy on asking, being inclusive and asking men about whether they're pregnant or not when they've got X-rays. It's just ridiculous. And to be fair, that's why the Tories wanted to cut 66,000 Whitehall jobs. There's so many people doing jobs they don't need to be doing. I used to work in offices back in the day where I sat there all day. I did my work within an hour, and 7 hours I was just, keeping myself looking busy.
Yeah, at the other end is teachers, doctors, people who work in the services, and actually they are busy all the time because we can see that because the massive waiting list and the problems. Yeah. So it's constantly changing these directions. It's not good. People will get fed up of it.
OK. Well, I actually think the Daily Star's front page, I saw the ghost of Lemmy riding a horse and eating pizza, is probably less wacky than the NHS one and asking men if they're pregnant, but there we go. Coming up, former editor of the Sunday Mirror, Paul Connew, joins me to talk about the Met statement on the incident involving GB News reporter Charlie Peters. But next, I'll bring you more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. Back in a tick.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Bad news for Liberal mothers who want to score virtue points by transitioning their kids, Lewis.
Tell
us what it is.
Is a California dad is granted full custody of 4-year-old son after boy's mom tried to raise the child non-binary.
It's almost like cult-like behaviour. You've got the mother transitioning and then the transitioning the son as well. It's interesting that, it's almost like a religion. You get, if you're a Christian, your kids are probably going to be Christian. If you're, Hindu, your kids are probably going to be Hindu.
No.
And if you're transgender, your kids are probably going to be transgender.
There's absolutely a causation there. We see plenty of times in videos. This is exactly it. And also we see the children of celebrities and people in particularly sort of liberal environments. It doesn't happen in some village in Indonesia or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, there's no such thing as a trans child. There's no such thing as non-binary. What there is are people with mental health issues and parents who want a virtual signal and also want to brainwash their children. This is an egregious example of that, where she was basically taking him to Disneyland, but he couldn't get on a ride unless he wore princess shoes. I mean, really evil, horrible stuff. You know, forced to wear a dress on his birthday. Just really nasty stuff. Now, here's the thing. You talk about the court going to him. No, that's not what happened. He took 800 pages of documentary evidence. He took 8 hours of police body camera footage showing this mental behaviour from the mother. And guess what? The courts ruled that the mum got him. They ruled against him. The only reason that he got custody of his child is because, thank God, a child protective services officer randomly got involved, looked into it themselves, and that's how he eventually got custody of the child. So the courts in America are utterly captured.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Ben Leo tonight, only on GB News. More papers have just hit the deck. The Sunday Times is first. Rioters face 10-year terms, warns CPS boss. Chief prosecutor says it's not about revenge, it's about justice, and hundreds more will go to court. Stephen Parkinson, actually, he's the guy who I featured in my 9 p.m. monologue, saying that police officers were going to be scouring the internet for people talking about the riots. He says, in the Sunday Times, the charging decisions were expected to soar, with a new phase of cases set to include more serious charges with stiffer penalties. Interesting. I wonder if that includes the online activity he was talking about previously. And the Mail on Sunday, security chiefs. Prime Minister kept in dark by aide Sue Gray. Starmer's chief of staff, Sue Gray, remember her, Partygate fame, accused of, quote, thinking she runs Britain. As the Mail on Sunday is told, she blocked top-level briefings. They've accused Miss Gray of thinking she runs the country, suggesting that even Cabinet Secretary Simon Case has been forced to ask her permission to speak to the Prime Minister. We talk a lot about the deep state, don't we, and the so-called blob. They call it the deep state in America. You've got people like Sue Gray overseeing the Partygate investigation, meant to be impartial, way political, clearly Labour-leaning. I mean, she's Starmer's chief of staff now. Her son, as I understand, is now a Labour MP as well.
Do you not remember Alistair Campbell?
Yes.
I mean, do you know, this is not really that new, because, if you're not watched in the thick of it,
it's one of those things that seems to sort of follow the Labour Party around even more than it does the Conservatives, is actually that they feel entitled to behave a certain way once they're in government. And I mean, Dominic Cummings used to talk about how difficult it was to get different parts of government to work when he was chief of staff in Number 10. I imagine it's going to be a lot more sort of ferocious now under Sue Gray, because that is ultimately who's running the show. Yeah. That's who's been brought in, supposedly because she knows how to run it.
About a month ago, Andy Burnham, Mayor of Manchester, did actually start to address this. He said something very interesting about the sort of high-level civil servants and how nothing can get past them. Yeah. Andy Burnham did say this, which I thought was perhaps one of the most honest things a politician said.
I mean, Diana, who are these people We don't elect them.
No.
They're not public-facing. Sue Gray hasn't spoken to the press in God knows how long. I mean, has she ever, Benedict? I don't know.
Not that I know, not that I know. And yet she wields so much influence over our Prime Minister.
I think it's insane, and on a serious note, I think it raises serious questions about the state of our democracy. Same in the United States. You know, Donald Trump's first term was, according to his own words, plagued by the deep state, by civil servants, by intelligence agencies who are blocking his agenda.
Well, supposedly one of the reasons why Joe Biden the Democratic Party struggled to force Joe Biden out of the race was because the White House put a wall, basically, between anybody and the president, and it became very difficult for people like Nancy Pelosi or anybody else to actually even get a face-to-face meeting with Joe Biden up until the point that he went on national television and made a complete idiot.
Well, Pelosi did a podcast last night or the night before I listened to it. She was openly sat there saying... I told Joe it was time to go. Yeah, it's I dealt the death blow.
Yeah, I mean it was a coup. There's no other word for it. Ultimately, what happened with Joe Biden, but it happened because they'd got to such a state where nobody could get through, and nobody could actually tell Biden. Nobody could actually have the pleasant conversation with him and say he needs to go, because his family members and his staff wouldn't actually let very important, powerful US politicians get in the room with him because they all knew once they did, the game was up.
Yeah, and when you take in sort of, lobbyists and everyone else, so much for democracy, a bit of a charade, if you ask me.
It was, wasn't it?
Right, time for the last word. Let's talk about a story sort of generated by GBNews, bit of an exclusive. Our reporter, Charlie Peters, was covering the protests in London today. They'd been to Nigel Farage's Reform UK headquarters and then marched, of course, through Westminster. Charlie had walked through the protest and all seemed fine and happy until this happened.
Don't touch me! Don't touch me! Don't touch me! I will... He's touching me!
Film it, Stevie. Film it. Get your stuff. Get it back. Get it back.
I'm not putting it back. My job is your safety. No. Yeah.
So, look, let's be honest, nothing major. There was an arm raised to the camera, and I think Charlie's security guy had to push the guy away. But that person's manner, being quite aggressive and shouting, it's threatening, to say the least. Well, the Metropolitan Police have released a statement on the incident tonight. They've said it's important that the press are able to report freely, including at protests, without being subject to harassment, abuse or intimidation. The footage released appears to show a protester trying to obstruct the GB News camera crew as they reported on the protest, by putting his hand up to the lens. And as he does so, a man who was working as security for the camera crew intervenes and pushes him away. Officers moved in quickly to prevent and further escalation. No allegations were made at the time and both parties went their separate ways. We've confirmed with GB News that they do not wish to take the matter further. So joining me now to discuss this is former editor of the Sunday Mirror, Paul Connew. Good evening, Paul. Thanks for staying up late to speak to us. First of all, what's your thoughts on that footage?
Well, of course, it was unacceptable, but I think GB News are right not to press it any further. It was one man behaving unacceptably, and journalists are entitled to cover protests, whether they're anti-fascist protests, anti-immigration protests, without being threatened or intimidated. But these things happen, and I wouldn't put that one high on the Richter scale, of incidents, especially compared with what we've been seeing, on our towns and city streets. Violent protests by the far right, and indeed, some violence by counter-protesters too.
Yeah, I mean, look, no one's really playing the victim here. I think it was just an interesting piece of footage, but it does raise questions. I mean, Benedict Spence, who's with us tonight, said earlier that there seems to be sort of a growing toxicity towards journalists and broadcasters in this social media age. I just wondered, did you have...
Some of my American journalist friends, who get far worse, in fact, both in verbal abuse and occasional, mild physical aggression when they're covering Donald Trump rallies, for example.
Did you ever get anything like this back in your day?
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, I'm an ex-war correspondent, and of course, there you wear, in many places, you wear vest with press on it. In fact, it doesn't always work, but it does work. But bear in mind, at the moment, the figures for journalists who are dying, sometimes in action, other times as the victims of repressive regimes, are at a record high. So it's not easy. And it's not safe being a journalist, but the job has to be done.
Do you think they're respected anymore, journalists?
I think, unfortunately, not in the way that we should be. But that, in a sense, is another legacy of social media. And social media has. I'm the co-author of a book on called Anti-Social Media with a question mark. Many great positives about social media, but it is dangerous too. And we've seen that. With the fake news that helped
Paul, the clock's against us. I apologise, the clock's against us, but thank you for joining us. Thank you to my panel tonight, really appreciate it. I'm back next week. Josh Howie is in the house tomorrow. Have a good weekend. Good night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we go through Sunday, it's going to be warm with plenty of sunshine, turning hotter even on Monday with the risk of some thunderstorms. Looking at the bigger picture, we had this waving front through today, bringing quite a lot of cloud, but high pressure will become more established as we go through Sunday. But back to tonight, we've still got a legacy of some cloud across parts of the southwest and definitely across parts of the English Channel too, but elsewhere, clear spells developing, any showers across Scotland generally fading, and under the clear skies it will turn quite fresh in rural spots, but in the south a quite muggy and uncomfortable night to come, with temperatures here holding up at 16 to 18 degrees. So through the start of Sunday morning then, plenty of sunshine first thing across parts of Scotland, still with the risk of this odd shower further towards the north. Across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, plenty of sunshine, perhaps turning a bit hazy with some high level cloud. And then further towards the south, there's still quite a bit of cloud around, should stay largely dry, and as we go through the day, that cloud should start breaking up, lifting and moving back towards the coast, but there may just be some fog still lingering here. Elsewhere though, plenty of sunshine on offer, and it's going to be feeling warm and humid as well, especially in the south. We could see temperatures rising here, 27, possibly 29 degrees, but elsewhere even reaching up to 20 to 22 degrees. As we go through Monday, we've got low pressure dominating, bringing some heavy thundery rain northeastwards, affecting Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, so expect some frequent lightning here. Elsewhere, largely dry, plenty of sunshine. It's going to be feeling hot and humid. In the south, we could see temperatures rising up to 32, possibly 33 degrees, and then turning fresher Tuesday and Wednesday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on a chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Sarah, welcome to the show. Obviously, you work for a tobacco company, so a little caveat there to slip in. Nevertheless, it's no surprise that the illegal market is growing so much. When you look at the cost of cigarettes in Britain, huge amounts of duty, and oftentimes, of course, criminality always finds its way into the system. Tell us more about your report.
Absolutely. I mean,